Hey everybody, I'm Sam Gross with ElectricBikeReport.com, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at the Electric Bike Company Model X Beach Cruiser. So this is a 500 watt rear hub motor powered, very customizable beach cruiser. We're a really big fan of this company and the bikes they make. Let's take a closer look. So the Model X in its base configuration is a single speed with a steel rigid fork and a 12 amp hour frame mounted battery, but this bike is not the Model X in its stock configuration. Electric Bike Company has sent us one that's a little bit nicer. So this bike most notably has an expanded battery range up to a 21 amp hours of energy. It's about 1,008 watt hours, which is a lot of battery life, and we'll get more into that in the range test portion of this review. But they added an additional 9 amp hour battery up front. It's in the bottom of the basket, and you can choose to toggle that on and off independently. In addition, instead of a rigid steel fork, this bike is a suspension fork to smooth out some of the more rougher parts of the road. And then it also has a custom frame color. That's something that's fairly standard from Electric Bike Company. They actually manufacture quite a bit of their bike here in the United States in Southern California, which gives them a huge amount that they can customize on this bike. So this bike is specially painted. In addition to that, instead of a single speed drivetrain, this bike has a 7-speed Shimano Altus rear derailleur tied to a Shimano Tourney shifter up front. It's a very classic beach cruiser style bike. It's got swept back handlebars, a very upright seating position, and Electric Bike Company bikes are pretty traditionally almost like the choppers of the e-bike world. They're fairly heavy, they're very upright, but they handle incredibly smooth and incredibly well. You don't feel a lot of that weight when you're actually out there riding the bike. This bike additionally has some upgraded tires. We've got Continental Contact Plus E50 tires. These are e-bike rated tires that roll a little bit more efficiently than the Schwalbes that come stock on this bike. Overall, it is a really nice component package, and the coolest part about it is you can pick and choose what you want from this bike and thus adjust how much you want to spend on the bike. So it's a great package. So because this bike is a quicker and heavier e-bike, Electric Bike Company has spec'd it with some Tektro Dorado 4-piston hydraulic disc brakes. So Tektro is a company that you're probably fairly familiar with if you've been paying attention to the e-bike world, but their Dorado disc brakes are very powerful 4-piston versions of their hydraulic brakes. They slow the bike down incredibly well and handle the bike's weight with ease. So to get an idea of how far the Model X can go on a single charge, we put it through 2 different range tests. The first of these tests we do on the bike's highest assist level. So in this bike's case, that's PAS level 5. For the second test, we do it on a lower pedal assist setting. So we used to do all these tests on PAS level 1, but we found after testing so many of these bikes that very few PAS level 1s actually give you much assistance at all. So instead, we've chosen to do the first pedal assist level that you can feel the bike giving you a measured and consistent assist on top of your pedaling. And for the Electric Bike Company Model X, that's PAS level 2. So in the highest assist setting, our low range test, we did 32.83 miles before the bike ran out of charge. And on the the low assist setting, so the longer range test, it went for 83.1 miles. Both of those range results are very, very impressive. So keep in mind that this bike that we reviewed has a larger than average battery, or at least larger than stock battery. So stock, this bike comes with a 12 amp hour battery, and this one has an additional basket mounted battery that adds another 9 amp hours for a total of 21 amp hours of energy. That's 1,008 watt hours, which is massive for an e-bike. But one thing to note about the Model X is its beach cruiser styling, the pedaling position it puts you into, and the bike's just sheer weight. It's really not a very efficient bike. So it really does well to have a larger than average battery on it, at least larger than stock. That 21 amp hours will really help you use it at a higher assist level, get more from the motor, and require less from your legs, because believe me, I've pedaled this bike with the motor dead. It's not very fun. It doesn't roll all that well. So I would highly suggest upgrading that battery. But all in, with the upgraded battery that we have, 21 amp hours, it's a very impressive result. Hill climbing ability is arguably the most important part of an e-bike, right? Everybody wants the hills to be easier. So in order to test how well the Model X climbs hills, we've brought it out to a local steep that we've lovingly dubbed Hellhole. So Hellhole is on average 12% grade for a third of a mile long, so that's quite a bit steeper and even longer than some of the more average hills you're going to find near a beachside in particular, or really anywhere else. So in order to test how well this bike climbs, we do 2 laps up Hellhole. The first we do on the maximum pedal assistance, so all 500 watts from the rear hub motor, plus the additional help from my legs getting up the hill. And then we also will do a throttle only test on this bike to see how well the motor performs without the help of my legs. So Electric Bike Company has spec'd the Model X with a 500 watt rear hub motor that peak powers quite a bit higher than that. I believe the number is over 1,000 watts. They don't publish torque specs for this motor, and torque is really the most important metric when it comes to hill climbing, but we have tested several of these bikes in the past with a very similar, if not the same, rear hub motor, and they tend to do fairly well on this test. This is a heavier bike. It does have semi-slick tires. It's a beach cruiser style. Aside from the tires, none of those features make it, or at least make it seem like a very good hill climber, but we're gonna see how well this bike goes up Hellhole. All right, so here we are doing the throttle test of the Electric Bike Company Model X, taking it on throttle only up Hellhole. So keep in mind that this is a fairly heavy e-bike. It's got a 500 watt rear hub motor. I'm not going to give it any sort of help from my legs. It's a pretty tough test, especially right here on this hill where it immediately gets steep. So we're down to 10 miles an hour and falling. Get a little bit of vibration from the rear hub motor. Oh, come on. We're down to 5, falling fast. 4. If we drop too much slower than this, I'm gonna have to call it because I'm having to start to balance the bike. And see if we can get it down to 3 and then we'll call it. All right, there's below 3. So unfortunately, the throttle only test was an incomplete. All right. So here we are, Electric Bike Company Model X, PAS 5 hill climb test. Cycling through the gears. This is a class 3 bike, so not gonna run out of speed going through that bottom. And this is a cruiser bike, so I'm not getting full leg extension. Not really able to give the bike all that much help, but it's pretty remarkable. I'm not pushing very much, still going at a talking pace, but I am still able to give the bike plenty of help, at least enough that it's not struggling as much as it was on just the throttle test. My theory on bikes like this is sometimes you're getting these rear hub motors struggling to produce enough torque on their own. You add just a little bit of pedaling on top, and it's pretty remarkable how much it helps. Getting near the top of the hill, picking up some speed, getting through this last little steep bit. Cycling through the gears. Wow, amazing night and day difference between this and the throttle test. And there's the top. So on our hill test, we had some interesting results with the Model X. On the throttle only portion of our test, the bike actually didn't make it up our hill. It stopped at about 2/3 of the way up on one of the steeper sections. And I have to be honest, that's not terribly surprising. This is a very heavy bike and we have only a 500 watt rear hub motor. Anywhere else, this motor would be plenty of power, but on a hill this steep with a bike this heavy, the hill just proved to be just a little too much. Now on our pedal assist level 5 test, we made it up in 1 minute and 43 seconds with an average speed of 10.5 miles an hour, which is a nice result. Again, keep in mind, this is a heavier e-bike with a motor that's 500 watts, and it's something that you're really only gonna ride, or not only gonna ride, but mostly gonna ride on beachfronts and boardwalks and places that are relatively flat and definitely not as steep as this 12% hill. So I have a hard time knocking the bike for not making it on the throttle only test. It is something to keep in mind if you do live in a very hilly area and plan to use the throttle a lot. But one thing I did notice was that it really didn't take very much pedaling for me in PIS 5 to make the bike go up the hill at a relatively good clip. It just took a little bit of extra torque from my legs and the bike was rolling just fine. So all in, some surprising results, but really not that bad. So in order to get an idea of how well the Model X comes to a stop, we're gonna put it through a braking test, where we bring the bike up to 20 miles an hour 5 times and slam on the brakes as hard as possible like we're doing an emergency stop. Then we're gonna take the average of all of those 5 and we're gonna have our average stopping distance. So the Model X is a heavier bike. So in order to handle that weight, Electric Bike Company has spec'd it with some 4-piston Tektro Dorado hydraulic disc brakes, which are incredibly powerful. They should have no problem handling the weight of this bike. My personal theory is that this is actually going to come down to the tires. So again, the Model X has upgraded tires, these Continental, we got to look at them, Contact Plus tires, and they're mostly slick. One thing we've noticed after doing this test many times is that the brakes will very quickly lock up the wheels and will begin to skid. Now, how well those tires stick to the ground is going to dictate how well it's going to stop, or at least that's my theory. But let's see how it does in practice. So the Model X actually outperformed my expectations in the brake test. I was a little bit worried that the very slick tires on here, these Continental City tires, were going to cause the bike to skid very far despite the very powerful Tektro Dorado brakes, but it actually wasn't the case. The Model X came to a stop on average in 14 feet and 7 inches, which is above our current average braking distance of all the different bikes that we've brake tested, which is right now at about 15 feet 8 inches. So this bike comes to a stop very well. The wheels did lock up, the bike did skid, but these tires seemed to grab onto the asphalt. It just kind of wanted to stick. I actually had to curve into this, so the bike, instead of the back end kicking out, going with the direction of the curve, the bike tracked fairly straight, which I found really impressive because, again, this is not a very light bike. It's a great performance from it. So to get an idea of how the Model X performs in each of its 5 pedal assist levels, we did put it to the test on our Electric Bike Report circuit. Now this is a 1-mile course that we did 6 laps on the Model X, 1 for each pedal assist level, plus a 6th lap with no help from the motor at all, and that's to get kind of a baseline of how the bike rolls with no assistance. And because this is a beach cruiser, it's not really designed for pedaling, or at least pedaling efficiency. It's not the quickest without any help from the motor. It's a little bit of a bear to get around the circuit, especially considering we got like a 30-foot hill on that 1-mile loop. But once you kick the motor on, you get nice measurable assistance level in each of the 5 pedal assist level. The exception to that is PIS 1, which gave us just kind of only a slight amount of help over the pedaling it with no help at all. And that's something we see quite often with these bikes that have rear hub motors, 5 PIS levels, and are typically on the more affordable end of the e-bike spectrum. But once you get above that PIS level 1, you get really nice jumps that are discernible between one another by about 1 to 2 miles an hour on average, which we really like to see, those nice consistent jumps. What that does is it gives the rider a lot of control over the motor and how much assistance they're getting at any given time. So all in all, I've been incredibly impressed with how the Model X has performed in all of our tests. It's all around just a really nice riding e-bike. It's got an incredible range, it's got nice acceleration, and even despite not making it over our test hill and just the throttle-only test, I would very much argue it has a really, really great climbing capability for a beach cruiser style bike. That specific test is going to overextend almost any bike we put to the test on it. And this one is mainly made for flatland beach cruising, rolling hills by the coast. The hill that we chose is made to stress this bike to the limit. But one thing I really want to point out about electric bike company bikes, even beyond the Model X, is just the amount of attention to detail they put in these bikes. These things are fully customizable to a degree that very few, if any, other electric bike companies can really offer. But they assemble these bikes entirely in their Southern California warehouse, and because of that, you as the consumer get to choose everything from the size of the battery to the type of seat post you get, to the color of the bike, even down to the color of the rims and the spokes and the nipples. It is very incredible how much control over what the end bike you're going to receive. It's kind of unparalleled of any other bike company in the bike industry. I've never really seen anything like it before, and it's very impressive, and it really adds to the overall quality of the product that you receive. On top of that, this is just an incredibly comfortable, well-riding, well-handling e-bike. It's something that I'm going to be reaching for on any of my kind of cruiser bike path days. But if you've enjoyed this video, if you've enjoyed hearing about the Model X, be sure to give us a like and subscribe to our channel. If you want to learn more about it, click a link in the description below this video for a more in-depth, detailed review of this bike. For Electric Bike Report, I'm Sam Gross. Thanks for watching.